the hole in the wall. Smash that subscribe button. Hit like, drop a comment if you dare. But once you step inside the story, there's no turning back. At 6:42 a.m., a janitor pushed open the emergency stairwell door of a quiet private bank in Berlin's Charlottenburg district. The building smelled wrong. Not smoke, not chemicals, something metallic and dusty, like concrete that had been torn apart in the dark. When he reached the vault level, he stopped breathing. The steel door to the vault stood open. Inside, hundreds of safety deposit boxes lay gutted and twisted, their contents stripped away. Watches, diamonds, bearer bonds, stacks of old cash, gone. On the far wall, a jagged circular hole yawned like an open wound, leading not into another room, but into solid earth. Beyond it, a tunnel disappeared into darkness. By the time police arrived, the number was already being whispered through radios and clenched jaws. $35 million worth of cash and valuables vanished without a single alarm triggered. Germany had seen organized crime before, but this felt different. Surgical, patient, personal. Chief Inspector Lena Voigt arrived as forensic teams sealed the building. She had spent 20 years chasing financial crimes, and she knew one thing instantly. This wasn't a smash and grab. This was a months-long operation, planned by people who understood the bank better than the people who worked there. The tunnel didn't start inside the bank. It ended there. When investigators traced it backward, they found the entrance 3 levels below a public parking garage across the street. A rented space, paid in cash, registered to a shell company that had dissolved 6 weeks earlier. The thieves hadn't broken in. They had burrowed in. Security footage from the garage showed nothing but normal traffic. Sedans, delivery vans, late-night parkers. No heavy machinery. No suspicious activity. Whoever had done this knew exactly how to hide in plain sight. As the city woke up to the news, panic spread quietly among the bank's clients. This wasn't just money. Some of the boxes held family heirlooms, documents tied to inheritances, secrets people paid to keep locked away forever. Now, those secrets were loose in the world. Lena stood at the edge of the tunnel, staring into the dark. The drill marks along the concrete were precise, evenly spaced. No cracks, no mistakes. She'd seen this pattern once before years ago, after a similar vault breach in Antwerp that had never been solved. The same invisible signature. By noon, a task force was formed. Financial crimes, organized crime, cyber, construction fraud. Anyone who might recognize the shape of this theft. The working theory was simple. This was an international crew, professionals who moved from country to country, leaving nothing behind but empty vaults and embarrassed institutions. Then the first complication surfaced. One of the stolen safety deposit boxes didn't belong to a wealthy collector or a business owner. It belonged to a mid-level city infrastructure official named Marcus Keller. No criminal record. No visible wealth. Yet inside his box, according to the bank's records, was a single item, a black ledger, registered but never examined. Keller didn't answer his phone. By evening, police found his car abandoned near the Spree River. Doors unlocked. Wallet still inside. No signs of a struggle. Just a faint layer of concrete dust on the floor mat. Lena felt the case tilt sideways. This wasn't just theft anymore. It was leverage. As media helicopters circled the bank, a different team combed through Keller's office. What they found raised more questions than answers. Payment schedules, construction permits, tunnel depth measurements logged as soil analysis. Everything was legal on the surface. Too legal. Someone had used the city itself as camouflage. Meanwhile, pressure mounted from above. The stolen value made international headlines. Foreign investors demanded answers. Politicians wanted reassurance. Quietly, banks across Europe began checking their own foundations. Late that night, a young analyst from the cyber unit brought Lena a report. Keller's access card had been used 3 times in the past month to enter municipal archives, sections dealing with underground utilities, historical blueprints, and decommissioned transit routes. He hadn't been planning an escape. He'd been mapping one. Lena returned to the bank, long after the cameras were gone. She walked the garage alone, counting steps, tracing sightlines. From the rented parking space, The tunnel's path suddenly made sense. It avoided every modern sensor, every reinforced wall. It followed forgotten corridors beneath the city, places no one monitored anymore. This wasn't just criminal intelligence. It was inside knowledge. As dawn approached, forensics finally finished clearing debris from the vault wall. Behind one collapsed deposit box, partially hidden, they found something that didn't belong there. A second, smaller drilled opening sealed hastily from the inside. Someone had come back after the robbery, and when they pulled the panel away, they discovered a single safety deposit box left untouched, its number scratched out, its lock intact. Inside was a burner phone. It rang once before the battery died, and etched into metal casing, barely visible under grime, were 3 letters that made Lena's blood run cold. Letters tied to a case everyone believed had ended years ago. But when they opened the archive file connected to those letters, they realized the truth. This wasn't the first vault. It was the last one they'd ever noticed. The map beneath the city. The archive file was thin, almost insulting in its simplicity. 3 letters on the burner phone matched a defunct task force name from a decade
Gentlemen, our
earlier.
latest intelligence
A
indicates
joint
a
European
significant
unit
development.
formed after
We
a
need to
string of
analyze these
silent vault
profiles in
robberies
connection to
across
media.
Belgium, Austria, and northern Italy. No alarms, no witnesses, no arrests. The cases have been quietly shelved, written off as unsolvable outliers committed by ghosts. The task force had been disbanded after its lead investigator vanished. Lena Voigt remembered the name. Everyone in financial crimes did, even if they pretended not to. Inspector Daniel Kruger. Brilliant, obsessive, a man who believed cities remembered everything that happened beneath them. He had disappeared on his way home one winter night, his phone left on a park bench, still warm. Officially, Kruger had burned out. Unofficially, some believed he had gotten too close to something powerful. Now his initials were etched onto a phone hidden inside a rob vault. The implication was unbearable. Either the thieves were mocking the past, or Kruger had never left the case at all. The burner phone yielded little before it died. No contacts, no messages, no location data. But its presence was deliberate. It was meant to be found. A calling card, planted where only investigators would see it. As pressure intensified, Lena authorized a quiet review of Keller's recent financial activity. What emerged was a careful pattern of small payments spread across years, routed through consulting fees, and shell companies tied to urban redevelopment projects. Nothing flashy, nothing illegal on its face. But when analysts overlaid the payments with construction permits, a disturbing image formed. Every site Keller touched sat above abandoned infrastructure, old subway lines, service tunnels, forgotten air raid shelters from the Cold War. A hidden second city beneath Berlin. The thieves hadn't just drilled blindly. They followed a blueprint only a handful of people still understood. Meanwhile, Keller remained missing. 2 days after the robbery, divers searched the Spree River near where his car was found. They recovered nothing but silt and weeds. No body, no evidence, just absence. The kind that suggested planning, not panic. Then the first threat arrived. It wasn't sent to police. It was delivered to the bank. A small padded envelope appeared at the reception desk. No return address. No postage marks. Inside was a single diamond, one of the stolen stones, along with a handwritten note. Stop digging. The message was clear. The thieves weren't just watching the investigation. They were managing it. Lena pushed harder. She reopened Kruger's disappearance, pulling sealed interviews and old surveillance. His last known work involved a German logistics firm that specialized in underground transport, a company that had gone bankrupt shortly after his disappearance. Its former executives had scattered across Europe, some retiring early, others reappearing in unrelated industries. One name stood out, Victor Halden. Halden was a civil engineer by training, a man known for designing complex subterranean projects. He consulted on metro systems in 3 countries, then vanished from public records 5 years ago. No death certificate, no social presence, nothing. Until now, license plate readers flagged a rental van registered under a variation of Halden's name, leaving Berlin less than 12 hours after the robbery, heading south toward the Czech border. By the time border authorities were alerted, it was already gone. The case was slipping through their fingers. As media speculation grew wilder, something more dangerous happened behind the scenes. Evidence began to disappear. Soil samples from the tunnel were mislabeled. Garage footage went missing for a critical 6-hour window. Someone with access was interfering. Lena's own office computer was flagged for unauthorized login attempts at 3:17 a.m., traced to an internal network. The thieves weren't outside the system. They were inside it. Trust fractured within the task force. Meetings became quieter, guarded. Every glance felt measured. Lena realized the greatest risk wasn't the criminals. It was the uncertainty of who else was compromised. The break came unexpectedly. A municipal worker reported unusual activity in a closed-service corridor beneath an old theater slated for renovation. Power fluctuations. Fresh ventilation noise. The corridor wasn't on any modern maps. When police entered, they found equipment still warm. Drill bits, support beams, food wrappers, and a wall covered in chalk markings, depth measurements, timelines, bank names. Not plans. A schedule. Berlin wasn't the target. It was a test. As teams photographed the wall, Lena noticed something else. A symbol etched repeatedly near the margins. 3 letters circled, then crossed out. Kruger. He hadn't been erased. He'd been removed. Before officers could secure the site, alarms blared across the city. Not bang alarms, traffic sensors, power nodes, communication relays. Dozens of minor disruptions, perfectly timed. A diversion. By the time Lena reached the street, her phone was vibrating uncontrollably. Reports flooded in. One suspect spotted, then lost. A witness recanted. A safe house discovered, empty. And then, finally, a call from an unlisted number. The voice on the other end was calm, almost apologetic. "You're standing on the wrong lay of the city," the man said. "And Keller is already where you can't follow." The line went dead. Hours later, workers draining a decommissioned tunnel outside the city limits found something lodged against a collapsed wall. A hard hat. Inside it, a folded piece of paper bearing a single sentence, written in the same careful hand as the warning note. "He built the map. We buried the proof." But when Lena turned the page over, her breath caught, because beneath the sentence was a diagram, one final vault, circled in red. And this time, the location wasn't a bank. The last vault, the circle location wasn't a bank, a museum, or a private collection. It was a government archive facility on the outskirts of Berlin, a place designed to be invisible. No signage, no public access, just concrete, fencing, and a name that meant nothing to most people. Federal Property Record Storage B-17. On paper, it held nothing valuable. Deeds, infrastructure contracts, historical zoning approvals, the kind of documents no thief would risk their freedom for, unless those papers proved ownership of everything beneath the city. Lena understood it before anyone said it out loud. The vault robberies weren't about money. The money was camouflage. What the thieves were really stealing was control, legal leverage buried in paperwork, deeds that quietly transferred underground access rights decades ago and were never digitized. Whoever held those documents didn't just know the city. They owned it. Police moved fast, too fast. B-17 was locked down before dawn. Armed units swept the perimeter. Engineers scanned the ground for tunneling activity and found nothing. No vibrations. No fresh soil. It looked untouched, which was exactly the problem. Lena walked the facility herself, ignoring the guard stares. She wasn't looking at walls or doors. She was listening. The faint hum of ventilation, the rhythm of a building breathing. In the lowest storage level, she felt it, a draft where there shouldn't have been one. Behind a row of filing shelves, hidden by a false wall, installed sometime in the late 1970s, they found the entrance, not newly drilled, old, forgotten, a passageway sealed by bureaucracy, not concrete. The thieves hadn't broken in. They'd come home. Inside, the tunnel opened into a chamber large enough to stand in, reinforced with modern supports. On a steel table lay folders stacked neatly, sorted, labeled. The work of someone who respected systems, not chaos. There were no criminals waiting, no dramatic standoff, just absence. And one man, Marcus Keller, sat in a chair at the center of the room, alive, pale, hands folded. He didn't look afraid. He looked relieved. He confessed without resistance. Years ago, Keller had discovered irregularities while digitizing infrastructure records. Entire sections missing. Deeds reassigned without public notice. When he pushed the issue, he was quietly warned to stop. Instead, he started copying everything. That was when Daniel Kruger found him. Kruger hadn't been investigating vault robberies. He'd been tracing ownership of the underground. The cities of Europe, rebuilt again and again after wars, had layers of forgotten agreements, emergency powers, temporary access rights that never expired. A small group of engineers, financiers, and officials realized they could use those documents to move unseen, to build without oversight, to access anywhere, anytime. Kruger tried to expose them. They made him disappear. Keller had spent the next decade pretending to be insignificant while helping Kruger's allies build a counterplan. The robberies were bait, loud enough to force attention, controlled enough to avoid casualties. Each vault funded the operation and distracted from the real theft. The documents in B. 17 weren't being stolen. They were being returned. By the time police secured the chamber, the files were gone, but copies had already been transmitted to journalists, auditors, and international courts. Quietly, irreversibly, the fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Construction projects froze across Europe. Officials resigned. Investigations spread into finance ministries and urban planning departments. The underground networks that once belonged to a shadow few were exposed to daylight. Keller entered protective custody, then vanished again, this time officially under a sealed agreement. Lena never saw him after that night. And the money? Most of it was never recovered. Some believed it funded legal battles and witness protection. Others whispered it disappeared into new tunnels, new cities, new plans. No proof ever surfaced. Months later, Lena visited Kruger's old case file one last time. Tucked inside was a note she hadn't seen before, written in his hand. You don't arrest the system. You make it impossible to hide. Berlin returned to normal, as much as it ever could. The bank reopened. The garage filled with cars. The hole in the vault wall was patched, polished, forgotten. But engineers reported something strange in the years that followed. Old tunnels collapsing that shouldn't exist. Unauthorized passages surfacing during routine maintenance. A city quietly shedding secrets it had buried too deep. The thieves were never named. No faces released. No convictions secured. Officially, the case was closed as an unprecedented theft solved through international cooperation. Unofficially, Lena knew the truth. The greatest crime hadn't been the $35 million that vanished. It was the centuries of silence that came with it. And if you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe, because some vaults are still sealed.